One winter, a group of children decided to build a snowman in the yard of their house. They merrily sculpted snow blocks, adding carrot noses and charcoal eyes to him. But when the snowman was almost ready, darkening clouds obscured the moon, and night fell earlier than usual. The children, ignoring the strange signs, finished their snowman and went to sleep. But something started happening at night. The snowman began to move, his charcoal eyes twinkling in the dark, and his carrot nose glowed with a faint orange light. He started walking towards the house, melting with every step. In the morning, when the children went outside, they were amazed by what they saw. Their kind and cheerful snowman turned into an evil creature, frighteningly resembling a human, but made of snow. He stared at them menacingly from his dull charcoal eyes. The children rushed into the house in fright, trying to find out what had happened. But the snowman disappeared as if he had never existed. All that was left were the faint traces of his carrot nose in the snow. Now the children are afraid that the evil snowman is still hiding somewhere in their yard, and they have to solve the mystery of his sudden transformation before something terrible happens. The children told their parents about the incident, but they did not believe them, attributed everything to childhood fantasy and fatigue. However, the children were sure that they had seen their snowman on the rocks and glass snow. Not trusting adults and deciding to figure out the incident themselves, the children decided to return to the yard to find traces of the snowman. They tried very hard, but found nothing except the spots where he was standing. Then they decided to explore the whole yard to see if the snowman had scored elsewhere. At this time, they heard a strange rustle of snow round the corner of the house. The children came over to see what was there, and then they saw that the snowman was standing in another corner of the yard. The same snowman that they had built yesterday. He was looking at them menacingly with his charcoal eyes again. The children jumped back in fright and rushed back into the house. Split in half, his eyes opened wide and he fell to the ground, losing his balance. The snowman became an immense pile of snow again. The children realized that the snowman came to life only when no one was in sight, and decided to tell the adults about it, but they didn't believe it either. The next evening, the children decided to sit out in the yard to see what was happening to their snowman. After waiting for dusk and making sure that none of the adults were in sight, the children began to watch. And then something terrible happened. When it got dark, the snowman began to rise slowly again, as if waking up from a winter dream. His charcoal eyes lit up with a dim but ominous glow, and he began to move towards the children's house. They cowered in horror, but could not take their eyes off this terrible sight. The snowman was getting closer. Their hearts were in a hurry. He was almost at the entrance when suddenly a huge lightning bolt exploded, illuminating the high snowdrift in front of them. At that moment, a heavy snowfall began, and the snowman, as if dissolving into a snowstorm, disappeared. The children were left confused, reflecting on what had just happened. The adults finally believed the children when they told them about the amazing incident. But still, no one could find an explanation for how the snowman came to life and disappeared in a snowstorm. Despite all attempts, the children have not been able to figure out what made the snowman so alive and sinister. At the same time, soon the last white stream disappeared outside the window, and spring came. However, the children still remembered that terrible night, and sometimes, when a whirlwind of snow dust swirls, it seems to them that their disappeared snowman will appear there again, calling them on new adventures. The terrible mystery of the snowman remained unsolved, and then something terrible happened. When it got dark, the snowman began to rise slowly again, as if waking up from a winter dream. His charcoal eyes lit up with a dim but ominous glow, and he began to move towards the children's house. They cowered in horror, but could not take their eyes off this terrible sight. The snowman was getting closer. Their hearts were in a hurry. He was almost at the entrance when suddenly a huge lightning bolt exploded, illuminating the high snowdrift in front of them. At that moment, a heavy snowfall began, and the snowman, as if dissolving into a snowstorm, disappeared. The children were left confused, reflecting on what had just happened. The adults finally believed the children when they told them about the amazing incident. But still, no one could find an explanation for how the snowman came to life and disappeared in a snowstorm. Despite all attempts, the children have not been able to figure out what made the snowman so alive and sinister. At the same time, soon the last white stream disappeared outside the window, and spring came. However, the children still remembered that terrible night, and sometimes, when a whirlwind of snow dust swirls, it seems to them that their disappeared snowman will appear there again, calling them on new adventures. The terrible mystery of the snowman remained unsolved. When spring came, the children still couldn't forget about what happened to their snowman. Although the snow had melted, their memories of this strange event had not disappeared. They decided to conduct their own investigation and find out what happened to their snow friend, deciding that the answers might be somewhere in the vicinity of their home. The children began to study the disappearance and mysterious return of the snowman. They visited the places where he was last seen, explored the neighboring forest and the nearest field, but nowhere have they found any traces or evidence indicating the origin of this strange phenomenon. However, during their search, they noticed a lonely old tower that was located on the edge of the forest. The children had heard various gossips about it, but none of them dared to go there because it was considered abandoned and cursed. They decided that this might be a clue and decided to go there. Soon they reached the tower and decided to see what was inside. They cautiously opened the door and went in. It was dark and quiet inside. They went up the stairs, and suddenly they heard faint whispers and the rustle of some papers. The children tried to understand where these sounds come from and what they mean, and then a cold wave of horror washed over them. The day I first saw him, I was sure that he had become a part of my destiny. He was somehow mysterious and attractive, as if from another world. I never believed in love at first sight, but at that moment everything changed. I couldn't take my eyes off his deep, mysterious eyes, and my heart beat faster when he smiled at me. We met by chance on the street, in a cafe in the park. It seemed like it was fate that brought us together. We spent our nights walking around the city, talking about everything in the world. I was ready to go to the ends of the earth just to be with him. But fate decided to play a cruel joke. One day he disappeared and stopped answering calls and texts. I was worried, not understanding what had happened. I tried to find him, even went to the police, but there was no trace. It was as if he had disappeared from the face of the earth. I continued to live my life, but there was a void in my heart that no one could fill. I dreamed of finding out the truth, to find him and bring him back. And then one day, many years later, I saw him again. But now he was a completely different person, and I didn't recognize him right away. I decided to approach him, but something inside me held me back, as if subconsciously warning me of danger. After all, he was different. He had changed, and now there was an unknown gap between us. I still wanted to find out the truth, to find answers to my questions. But I didn't know if we could get back what was between us. One day, following him, I saw that he had met a woman. Their meeting was full of passion and mystery. My heart was pounding with pain. I couldn't believe that he could forget what had happened between us. I decided to act. I wanted to understand why he disappeared, why he changed, and what happened during all this time. I began to investigate his past, contact his friends, relatives. The story of his disappearance began to be put in order, and I found out that he was also looking for me. But according to him, his own safety was more important than leaving me safe. As I unraveled the mystery, I discovered that his disappearance was connected to the dark side of his past, a mysterious past that he gradually began to reveal only to me. I realized that he never forgot me, not for a second. But fear and danger forced him to withdraw into himself. I stopped for a moment, weighed the pros and cons, and decided to give him a chance. We both knew that our future would be full of dangers and challenges, but we were ready to fight for our happiness together. We began to reveal all the secrets and fears to each other, making sure that our past could not control our future. And although we still had many challenges ahead of us, I knew that we could overcome them together. We were united not only by love, but also by the desire to meet after all the trials and difficulties. We began to reconnect in a new way, to build a new path and future. Life had completely changed, but we were back together. And although we still had a lot of work to do to get back what we had lost, I believed that we had everything we needed to overcome it together.